Thank you for those kind words. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me here, all of you at Fort Worth, letting me enjoy this night with you. I want to say to Jeff, John, the board, Jonathan, who first invited me almost 2 years ago, I want you to know the following. It was in November of 2019 that the On-Campus Muster Student Committee invited me to speak to them, and I was moved that in their invitation, they expressed an appreciation for the aspects of memorial that Bonfire had come to represent. Truly, Bonfire is a memorial in the most important kind. It is an act of memorial. It is, as I would put it to them, a sort of muster of the fall. I put a lot of thought into the time I would have with these students, and so I find myself at Coldus, waiting in the lobby, surrounded by all these young Aggies committed to this great tradition. They're all polished, professional. And one of them comes up to say howdy and welcome. It's the young man who first invited me to speak to them. Polished, professional. He even had a binder. He walked up to me and said some nice things in a very polished and professional way, and so I tried to reciprocate that with him. But then he continued. He had something else that he wanted to say, and it was clear that he'd been thinking about how to say it for a while, and now he needed to, and he couldn't figure it out. And so finally he just said, Dion, can you not cuss? And so that's what I wanted you to know. I can, in fact, not cuss. There are some faces that I recognize in the crowd that might be surprised to hear that. I know that you won't be surprised to hear that I like to tell stories. It was over a year ago that I was looking forward to telling you about the incredible story of Bonfire in 2019, marking 20 years after 99. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to fit that entire season into one talk. It was a season that represented, as this band Orange Pot so well puts from Leviticus, the fire shall ever be burning, it shall never go out. You'll find lots of things on the pots at Bonfire. It's not only in the round number years that you see references to 99. The students wear that memory, not just on their pots, they wear it where it matters, in their hearts, as they stream forth into the woods carrying this memory, this act of memorial. They do it in such a way that requires deep investment. They do it the hard way, cutting down every tree with axes, carrying them on their backs to the trucks where they are loaded. I expected that. And everything they do, they enact a memory. And in doing so, just as muster, remembering lends a certain gravity and seriousness. But even here at Muster, what are we doing? We're remembering happy times, good times, joy, the enthusiasm and exuberance of celebrating being fighting Texas Aggies. There is still joy at Bonfire. There is happiness. And so often a brown pot is found in the middle of it. There's weird and happy rituals in the woods. There's laughter in the woods, carrying all the way through to Stack. Bonfire has a tremendous capacity to embrace the joy, that feeling of being a fighting Texas Aggie, and to balance that against legacy. Bonfire is a legacy. In 2019, little Jimmy Henderson paid us a visit. Here's Jimmy holding the pot that he himself first wore, standing, laughing, enjoying a shared legacy with his great, you get the idea, grandson. The legacies are family. Major General Thomas paid a visit in 2017 with his son Wyatt. The Major had stories. And now so does his son. Jim McTasney, his wife Lisa, they met in Aggieland. Jim would be head stack of Bonfire. Their son River would find Bonfire himself without provocation, become a butt pot for his outfit, and eventually become a brown pot. The McLeods, Dave and Sarah, they met at Bonfire. Dave was with Aston, Sarah with Mosier. They would eventually marry and then find themselves at load in 2020 with Walton. They were loading with their son, a freshman who, if he keeps himself squared away, will find himself a crew chief in Walton Hall in 2021. The legacies don't just reach back in time. They stretch into the future. I look forward to the possibility of one day meeting another generation of motivated Frenzel, or perhaps even another generation of McInnes. This is my daughter taking a break for her work with her adopted home of Leggett Hall and the Leggett ladies, taking a break to hydrate, the ever-motivated companion of Bonfire, Ace. It was on one of our trips home from one of her adventures with Bonfire that as she was drifting off to sleep, she asked, "Daddy, when I become an Aggie, will there be a bonfire for me?" And it was with certainty that I could tell her then that yes, there would be. As long as there were Aggies with the courage to stand and relive and re-remember this tradition, to make it real. The courage to remember, as Neely did in 2019, when they earned center pole. It is the greatest honor that any crew can be awarded for their conduct in the woods over the season. And of their own accord, Neely dedicated this great achievement, their season, to 12 young Aggies who they never met, who they regarded as friends. They saw to it that they would rise over another bonfire, another season of memories. In 2019, as in every year, Bonfire held its most important night, the memorial shift. On November 17th of every year, regardless of how much work is left to be done, and there is always a lot of work that's left to be done at that point, Stack rests. Every participant stays home, rests, refreshes, reflects, bathes. They take the night to regard the greater meanings of Bonfire. Stack, ever since center pole has arrived, has been under 24/7 guard, and so that every participant and every leader may go to the Bonfire Memorial, past red pots, past leaders come back and guard the stack in the place of the students. It is an indescribable night. This moment right here is 20 years to the minute after 99. I met Mike Self, Jerry Don Self's dad, in 2013 at Byrne. And from then until he passed away, at this moment, every year, I would call him. And we would talk about Squadron 17, about Walton, about Load, about Bonfire. And I would remind him that there was a body of students, extraordinary students, who remembered his boy. And what an extraordinary body of students these are. This is them at the conclusion of that bonfire in 2019, and what has become something of a tradition. They gather in front of this stack that they have built, this memory, this monument, this testament. After the last log is wired in, all those who are left at whatever horrible hour bonfire is finished, and they take a picture to capture that memory. And so one bonfire is concluded, and now another must begin. At Aggies, how do we begin another bonfire? You burn it down. Over the course of the many interviews that were requested of John Comstock in 2019, it was learned that he harbored motivations to help light a bonfire stack. And so that would happen. John brought in the torch, handing it to the juniors, who would in turn pass that flame to the seniors. They would circle the stack 3 times, and on the signal, they would light the stack. They would burn bonfire, clearing the field for another season. Now, that other season, for all that Bonfire 2019 remained the same, that new season in 2020 would be something completely different. By May, the students had already lost most of their spring cleanup time. That is the time, not only are they cleaning up their previous cut site, that is a critical time for training and developing the next year's leaders. They should also be out raising funds and awareness for the next bonfire. They weren't able to do that. They were watching this critically important time of the bonfire season, which stretches from November to November. They were watching that disappear. And so I called them with this crazy, wild, unimaginable hypothetical. What are you going to do if this stretches into the fall? And they answered the question as if it was a stupid one. We're going to build bonfire, is what they said. With such certainty that I took it as a promise. I took it as a guarantee. Of course, I had no idea how, so I asked them, and over the next few months, they would answer that question. Bonfire in 2020 would be very different. There would be new protocols of the students' own vision. There would be masks. There would be social distancing. Crews would be split into Group A and Group B. Group A would be in the woods on Saturday, Group B on Sunday. In this way, they cut the numbers in half, the participants that would be out there. They imagined and helped create a remote check-in system so that nobody would even have to share a pen or a pencil. The crews were forbidden from fraternizing with each other in the woods. So many things. A litany. I could write a book about what these students created. And with these rules explained at cut class, they marched into the woods. Past, red pot log, which always, every year, marks the entrance to the woods. I'll ask you to remember this. We're going to come back to this later. You'll see it again. Now, among the interesting, strange, new things that I saw in 2020, I understand this is hard for some people to see. This is a tractor that is loading a truck. I apologize for having to show you this, but it's true. Early in the season, this should have been the first day of load. It was the second week of cut. The logs were on the ground. They were at load site. And Bonfire's resolve and their commitment to their protocols were tested when a member of one of the load crews tested positive for COVID. Now, load is far away from the woods. Nobody's ever going to come anywhere near it. But Bonfire would accept no compromise. The load crews would stay home for 2 weeks per the protocol. Now, I was on my way home from this exact cut. I was carrying back this system that the students had envisioned, this remote cloud connecting. I should tell you, they called it the Remote Data Access Storage and Synchronization System. You following there? I was bringing this system back, and I got back into cell reception, and my phone started to blow up, messages, voicemail notifications. I get to my office, call the last call I received. It was my father, also Dion McInnes. I said, "Dad, what's going on?" He says, "They're looking for you, son." I mean, there's a list. I don't know. I said, "Who is it?" He says, "It's a Danny Pugh." He says he's from Texas A&M. I said, "Dad, that is the Vice President of Student Affairs. What is he doing calling you?" Well, Dr. Pugh, a credit to his position, you should know, was enjoying some time with his family in what was a fraught season all across the board. He was having lunch on a weekend, and he got a call from the COVID command center that there had been a positive test among some of the students at A&M, and it was suspected that they were participating in Bonfire. And Dion, you don't want anybody sick at Bonfire. And I said, "You're absolutely right, sir. Let me put the name into the database here." And as I was typing, he said, "Database?" And And I was able to confirm with him right then, this person you're looking for has identified himself as testing positive for COVID. He's sat himself out for 2 weeks. Not only that, his entire crew has sat themselves out for 2 weeks. Not only that, another crew that they came in contact with during the week has sat themselves out until everybody can produce negative tests. And that was the end of that call. It was a wonderful call. He said, could you please call the command center? I called the command center. I told them the exact same thing. And when I did, there was a pause, and the lady said, how do you get them to listen? As I told her, I said, not to be obtuse, ma'am, but I don't get them to do anything. They made this commitment to each other. This is their tradition. They are family, and they are not going to let each other down. Not through all the weird things in 2020. When they enhanced the double-cut system, they started sending the crews to stack site, to prepare stack site earlier than it had ever been prepared before, burying wires, setting the perimeter lights, meticulously sorting the logs on the skids so that in the event of any sort of quarantine during stack, they would be able to navigate their work efficiently, without rushing, conducting their business without temptation of violating the commitments they made to each other. It was out here on one of these mornings that I saw something that I have never seen before. I've seen a bull before. I have seen a bull before. See, what happens is stack is built on what is a working pasture. They run cattle, and on this morning there was this impressive specimen of bull working his way through the skids, and he was limping as if he was injured. And so the students being busy, I called the landowner and I let them know, and she said, I'll be right there to have a look. And it was a few minutes after that I would look up and see a blinking light coming through the front gate. And I assumed that she was making a hop over to check on her animal, and I assumed wrongly. And that is the reason why the best picture that I got of what I saw was this. Stackside is 12 miles away from campus. And all due respect to this young motivator, but he is not Lance Armstrong. He had missed the caravan, and when he did, he was handed a golden ticket for a day of rest and relaxation. And rather than take it, he found a bicycle, put on his pot, and rode out to stack site. Such is the level of motivation and commitment of the Bonfire Building Aggie. Showing up to an early morning Saturday shift on the weekend of the Arkansas game so that no work would be lost while everyone would still be able to attend the game and stand with the 12th man at night. There was something else unusual that I saw in 2020 when the butt pot from Squadron 16, there in the yellow shirts with the black jagged stripes, came up to me and told me, did you ever think that you would see this, Dion, Squadron 16 working with C2? I know that I was thinking then exactly what you're thinking now. What are you talking about? He would go on to explain to me that Squadron 16 had executed one of the most brilliant pullouts that have ever been executed on the quad. See, Squadron 16 decades ago went out and bought yellow shirts and put black jagged stripes on them, like Charlie Brown. They are affectionately known as the Charlie Browns. Charlie Brown is, of course, from the comic strip Peanuts. Peanuts are, of course, what elephants eat. Elephants are, of course, the exclusive purview of the senior class. After pulling off this brilliant pullout, they paid consequences and then were rewarded for their inventiveness with the privilege of continuing to wear these shirts, but it had to be these exact shirts. And so these exact shirts have been passed down for decades, and every fish that has been allowed to wear the shirt leaves their initials on the shirt. Now, where does C2 fit in? You might recognize C2 as being the keepers of the inimitable tradition of the Flight of the Great Pumpkin. The Flight of the Great Pumpkin on the quad, coming from Charlie Brown. The freshmen in C2 aren't allowed to know Charlie Brown. So that's for your next Aggie Trivia night. Go ahead and put that one in your pocket. Bonfire remembers everything. Fun stuff. Squadron 16's memory of Bonfire is incredible. Squadron 16 was also Tim Curley's outfit They remember important things too. And so with their deep and committed memory, it was some years ago that I asked their butt pot, knowing what you know, why do you build Bonfire? And he told me that in building Bonfire, I get to know Tim. Bonfire remembers, like FHK would in 2020. FHK earned Center Pole. In 1999, FHK lost 3 of its members. And when FHK earned their Center Pole in 2020, they would dedicate that achievement to those 3 members who they still held in their hearts as members of their crew. The Corps would earn a perimeter pole, which they likewise dedicated to those who passed being members of the Corps of Cadets in '99. Into the very structure of Bonfire itself is a memory. We recognize the center pole. This is the inside of the bonfire stack when it begins. Today, every log touches the ground, so to create the wedding tier profile, you start with the tallest logs in the middle, and as you work your way out, you use shorter and shorter logs. At the center is the center pole, and radiating from it are 4 other poles sunk deep into the ground and braced in. This is the same architecture, though a far more refined version of what we instituted in 2003. There were 8 of us in charge in 2003. We were the gray pots. We would not dare call ourselves red pots, so we were the gray pots. One of us, Levi Garrett Wendell, one of the most extraordinary figures I've ever met in my life, a terrific Aggie, a heck of a motivator. We had not yet finished cut when in a freak accident near his home, he suffered a neck injury and he would pass away within a week. About a month later, the inner workings of our new stack, the first of its kind, were on its way to stack site, and we Grays got together, and we realized that everything at Bonfire has to have a name, and these did not yet have one. And so it was decided then that they would be called the Wendell Sticks. So important are these Wendell Sticks to the safe architecture of Bonfire that they are held in high regard by anyone who comes anywhere near them. And those in charge of the quadrants at the base of Bonfire are instructed to treat them with the utmost care. And so I was quite pleased when I arrived in 2020 to find this. It was a letter. Apparently, someone running one of the quadrants had allowed a tree to brush against the Wendell stick on its way stackward. It was a letter that said, "Dear Wendell, I am so sorry. So sorry I hurt you. Please forgive me and give me another chance to cover you in fat logs." Now, being a friend of Levi, I could hear him laughing. Bonfire doesn't just remember. Bonfire somehow has the ability to remember in exactly the right way. And in that way, Bonfire 2020, for all of its differences, was exactly the same. There was clearing brush. There was cutting trees. There was hauling logs. There was loading them. There was unloading them at stack site. There was center pole unload. There was center pole raising. And then there was stack. Through to the end, it was fundamentally the same. And when one bonfire was completed, another one must begin. And we begin Bonfire the way we Aggies do. The torches were brought in, shared between juniors and seniors. They would walk their laps, and on the signal, they would light the stack. And as the stack was consumed, the former red pots became seniors, and with great intensity and purpose, they sought out and found the pot and the legacy that was now theirs, and they stepped enthusiastically into a new season. Bonfire would burn, though with limited attendance. Streaming live to Aggies across the world, the students made the commitment that even if they were not allowed to have attendance there, They would provide Aggies all over the world with at least one thing somewhat normal. Tex Ags would stream. Countless Aggies would watch as the field was cleared. And now I told you that you would see this log again, didn't I? I stepped a little bit ahead, though. There was one stop that was made on the way to Stack. So let me rewind a little bit. I think I rewound too much. Thank you to Dr. Gene Hawkins for allowing me to share this with you. This is Coach Jackie Sherrill up in the Stack in 1985. It was at Bonfire that Coach Sherrill was so overcome with motivation that he was inspired to create the legendary 12th man kickoff team of walk-on Aggies. He always held a special place for Bonfire. And so I thought of him when the Red Pots called me with this crazy idea that they had. I had a crazy idea to call Coach and say, the Reds have a crazy idea, Coach. What do you think? And Coach said, give me a minute. And so in short order, for the first time in decades, it would be a meeting of the motivators. This is the Red Pots presenting Coach Fisher with a slice of Red Pot log. I believe it was somewhat bigger than what he expected. Now, I understand he's a champion coach. He's seen a lot. But you would have thought that this was one of the coolest things that ever happened to him. I know that the feeling was mutual. The Red Pots would take that motivation. Bonfire would take that motivation. As they finished an extraordinary season. Bonfire burned, and as it burned, the window sticks held, braced in, the nest of wires held, the superset cables held, but ultimately Bonfire would yield its signature twist in a cloud of ash and embers and dust. Another year of memories complete, another year to begin. For my part, I'm proud to have been able to share memories like this with motivated Aggies who believed, who had the vision and the will to see that this tradition, this tribute, this memory would continue. It's easy for me, for all of us to believe that the Aggies who have followed us are following our example. That is true. But I'm here to tell you that it is also true that they are setting for us a noble example. They wear our names. They wear the names of people who we knew and loved. They stand together boldly. Together, they motivate each other. They motivate themselves. Through play, through work. They stand together side by side, brothers and sisters, with the vision to aspire to this extraordinary thing and see it through to its conclusion. They stream forth, carrying loads lighter than the legacies they bear. They rise, they stand, for each other, but more importantly, for all of us and everyone who has ever come and gone. They say, we are still here. We will always be here. We are here. We're here. Here.